Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where, man, it is slim pickings out there when it comes to movie news stories. But I managed to find 3. It was hard, I'm not going to lie, but I think that that's a combination of a really tough time at the box office right now. Hollywood is indeed struggling, and I think they're a little depressed because summer's turning out so poorly at the box office. It was reported actually late yesterday that so far summer 2016 is running 22% behind summer 2015. But also, of course, there is a lot of tragedy in the news as well here in the United States, and that obviously is, I think, making people not want to release movie news information appropriately so. There are more important things to be discussing. You should also take a look at some of the comments made by late night talk show hosts last night, trying to come back on the air after such a difficult and tragic weekend. It's hard to transition to a comedy show when, of course, people are not quite in a laughing mood. But anyway, let's discuss these stories. This isn't the forum really for discussing gun control, but I do agree with the sentiments that are out there. I think that I can understand people, the Second Amendment, wanting to protect that, but nobody needs an automatic weapon really to feel that their amendment rights are being met. But anyway, let's move on to the news. Okay, the movie news. So again, I said I found you 3 stories. So the first one is, we've discussed that Disney is basically trying to make every property that they own into a live action movie, every animated property. And Winnie the Pooh is one of them. But as they try and make a live action Winnie the Pooh, over in the UK, they're trying to give it the Finding Neverland treatment. That, of course, is the Harvey Weinstein, produced movie about J.M. Barrie and with Johnny Depp and Kate Winslet about the writing of Peter Pan. And now they're trying to focus on AA Milne and his experiences and his family's experiences as the author of Winnie the Pooh. It's called Goodbye Christopher Robin, a suiting UK-like title. And it's going to be directed by Simon Curtis. Now, that's not Richard Curtis. Richard Curtis is an incredibly successful UK filmmaker. He did 4 Weddings and a Funeral, Notting Hill, Bridget Jones's Diary, Love Actually, the Mr. Bean movies, and then also War Horse. Sometimes he's a writer, sometimes he's a writer-director. And he also most recently did About Time. About Time was actually a very good movie, and it was one of Domhnall Gleeson's first big roles. And actually, it's him and Rachel McAdams, and it's very much a Rachel McAdams type movie. But Margot Robbie had a small role in it before she hit the big time with Wolf of Wall Street. And I bring that up because Domhnall Gleeson and Margot Robbie are going to be reunited for Goodbye Christopher Robin. So Richard Curtis first brought them together, and now Simon Curtis, of no relation, is going to direct them in Goodbye Christopher Robin. Simon Curtis, he did the Woman in Gold, the Helen Mirren, Ryan Reynolds movie that came out like last year. He has an okay track record, but he's no Richard Curtis. But anyway, this is going to tell the story of AA Milne and his wife, Daphne, played by Margot Robbie, and his son, Christopher, and their nanny, and what it was like for the family when they became a sensation, a literary sensation, going on book tours, everyone wanting to meet the real Christopher Robin, because, of course, Winnie the Pooh is based on A.A. Milne's son, Christopher, and his toys. And I mean, obviously, I guess it wasn't all happy, fun, and games, because then why else would you make a movie about it? They'd be like, yeah, it was awesome. We loved being famous and rich and traveling the world. You want to give us an Oscar for that? I'm sure there are problems between the family. But anyway, that sounds okay to me. I think, Finding Neverland, they certainly got a lot of mileage out of that. It was an awards contender. It's gone on to become a Broadway musical. So Goodbye Christopher Robin certainly, would be something that would want to follow in that film's footsteps. But I'm not sure. I don't really know. These behind-the-scenes stories, I don't know how true they are. And Winnie the Pooh is such a beloved property, a huge property for Disney. I don't really know if I want to, every time I look at it, be like, yeah, well, real Christopher Robin was depressed and unhappy. So I don't know. We'll see. I would rather that Richard Curtis was making it. But I know it'll be nice to see if the UK can kind of take back that property, as it really now does seem like a Disney property. All right, so that's the first story of the day. And the second story of the day is that James Wan continues to broaden his horizons. He came in through the horror entrance to Hollywood with a bang, or with a scream, I guess is a more appropriate thing to say. And he's moved into blockbusters quite successfully with Furious 7 and in the upcoming Aquaman. But he wants to do more with comic book movies because he is going to take the comic book that he created over at Boom Studios, and he's going to make it into a movie producing with Brad Peyton, the director of not only Journey 2, but San Andreas at the helm. And it's so nice to see the director of San Andreas get something because, Dwayne Johnson has been riding that wave pretty darn far over the past year. And Brad Peyton, while he is attached to some of those Dwayne Johnson projects, it's nice to see him get something on his own as well. But anyway, what's interesting here is that you really should be paying attention to Boom Studios. And full disclosure, Boom Studios is the publisher of my original comic, Superbia, which was a 4-issue miniseries and then ran an additional 12. So I know them very well over there, and I'm very happy to see them doing so well. Boom Studios, they had the Lumberjanes property be picked up at Fox, and they also have their Irredeemable comic book written by Mark Waid. That's really something that squarely put them on the map. That has Adam McKay attached. And the reason you're seeing Boom Studios so active in the movie sphere is because they have a distribution deal with Fox, a first look deal. They're set up at the Fox studio, and anything that they would like to do is a movie or TV project, or basically any kind of project beyond comics, Fox gets first dibs. And Fox is very interested in mining the library that Boom Studios has after, putting themselves together with a couple of other companies. So they actually have a pretty good library of titles. But also, as you can see, they have some original comics that have Hollywood talent attached, like James Wan. So this is called, so look for more, so every time you see Boom in the news, not only look for them as a comic book publisher, but also, expect to hear their name because of their connections. And also you might want to check out their titles because they do kind of have a pipeline into Hollywood via Fox. But this is called Malignant Man, and this is, and it never really became a big comic. This is one of my pet peeves, actually, with the comic book industry. You see Mark Millar doing this all the time now, even to the point where he had a new comic just recently announced, and Hollywood Reporter ran an article saying, oh, is this the next big, next big property? And it's like, it hasn't even been released yet. Why are you doing Mark Millar that kind of PR favor? Come on. I've actually stopped reading Mark Millar's comics because I feel they've just become pitches. I'm like, I'm not supposed to read this. This is for a Hollywood suit. Why are you bothering me? And I've never read Malignant Man, so I can't speak to the quality of that. But I'm sure that when it was pitched to Boom, the idea was, hey, it's James Wan. Let's get this on paper. Let's establish it, and then get it into being a comic. But James Wan is a hot name right now. I would want to invest in anything James Wan wanted to do, and so I'm not surprised to see this moving forward. So it's called Malignant Man. I wonder if have any of you read it, and if so, what did you think of it? And it's about a guy who thinks he has a tumor, a fatal tumor. And I don't know if it stays fatal, but it turns out that it's an alien parasite. Don't you hate it when that happens? That's tough. That's tricky. You don't want to be insensitive to everyone who actually has a fatal tumor, and it's not an alien parasite that gives them special powers. But anyway, that's what happens here. You think it's a fatal tumor, but it's an alien parasite. It gives him abilities, and he finds himself having to deal with, of course, this crazy situation and uncover some secrets, etc. So we'll see. I have tremendous faith in James Wan. I love the people over at Boom, and Fox must be wanting to move forward with this for a reason. Because James Wan's slate is pretty crowded. It's not like he desperately needs work, so, they have to feel that there is room for this. It's worth making room for this. So that's the second story of the day. Now, the third story of the day is that DreamWorks is continuing to move forward. Is it a new day for DreamWorks? They've been acquired by Universal, aka Comcast, the parent company, after Disney killed their Hasbro potential deal. And so new life is reborn unto them. But they have this Trolls movie coming out, which, very good song from Justin Timberlake, but the Trolls stuff so far does not look particularly promising, right? But the Boss Baby movie that they have slated to come out in 2017 is looking a little better. And the reason it's in the news today is that they've cast some more voice talent, and there's been some information revealed about the plot a little bit more, which I think sounds promising. So anyway, Alec Baldwin has already been attached to voice the baby, movie, which is going to be tough, though, because Stewie, of course, from Family Guy is so famous with the Rex Harrison-inspired voice by Seth MacFarlane. So I think that the DreamWorks Boss Baby is going to have to compete to some degree with Stewie. But anyway, although Alec Baldwin is a great choice. So Alec Baldwin's going to voice this baby. And the new cast members are Jimmy Kimmel, Lisa Kudrow, Patton Oswalt, who does so much voiceover work, and Steve Buscemi. And Tom McGrath is directing, and he did Madagascar, but he also did Megamind, which I think is one of the best animated movies that DreamWorks Animation has put out, and I always feel bad that it doesn't get the recognition that I feel it deserves. Very smart twist on the whole Superman, superhero, supervillain situation. But anyway, so some more story details is that an older brother is upset when his baby brother arrives because the baby just like takes everything over. And that's something that a lot of families deal with, the struggle between siblings when a new one arrives on the scene. So that's why the baby's called Boss Baby. It's the boss of the house. But then it says the brother discovers some weird plot that means that he and his baby brother must work together to save not only their parents, but the world. And I don't know, that seems overly complicated to me. Maybe they feel that, just a story about brothers isn't going to do so well in today's competitive marketplace, especially for animated movies. So I'll be interested to see how this comes together. I have tremendous faith here in Tom McGrath off of Megamind, so I'm up for seeing a trailer. But it seems weird to me. I don't understand how, if the problem is the baby being the boss, but then there seems to be like another problem that, is not coming from the baby. It seems like a first act misdirect. So I don't know. We'll see. So that's the third story of the day. Now, for the viewer question, this comes from Jacob Fisher. And Jacob says, "Hi, Grace. I got a question for you, actually. Make that two. They're related." So Jacob says, "This weekend I saw the Warcraft movie. To me, it was good. Not great, just good, but not bad either. But unfortunately, even though it did well in China, it bombed. It did so well in China, though, that it might be salvaged. We'll see. Kind of like Need for Speed." But Jacob says, "It seems like with every film adaptation of a video game, they always seem to bomb. Like Prince of Persia, Need for Speed, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, even Super Mario Brothers. I'm sure Assassin's Creed is so scared right now." Okay, but anyway, Jacob says, "My questions are, number one, why do movies based off of video games do so badly? And number two, can Hollywood make a good video game movie? Or are there any video game movies? Or have there been any good video game movies? P.S. Love your show. Keep up the good work." All right, so I'm going to start with question number two. Well, don't forget the Resident Evil franchise has been very successful. They've had numerous entries because the movies do well. So I think you can't discount that even if it's not your personal tastes. The first Lara Croft was considered very successful, and they had a sequel, not so successful, but they are bringing that back. I think the Angry Birds movie just did very well. So yes, there are some video game movies that have done well, right? But it is a problem. It is very problematic. So that leads to the first question from Jacob. And I feel that the problem there is a change in story structure. I think that the story needs are so different for video games than they are for movies that that's kind of where you run into the problem, right? I mean, they have a basic setup, but then a lot of the action has to be directed by you, and also they can't have too strong of a storyline because then, it doesn't leave enough openness for the interaction within the game. I am curious, a lot of people want to see the Uncharted series move over to movies, but Max Payne kind of had a good storyline, but that didn't work out either. So I'm not quite sure. There might be a little bit of problem of sensibility between the people making the games and the people making movies. Who knows? But then again, Deadpool transitioned quite well, and that had a video game director at the helm. So I think there must be something off in how a game is set up versus how a movie is set up, and also I feel like up until this point, movies haven't had a tremendous amount of respect for video games, right? Like they haven't been like, let's try and make, I think you have to remember that Christopher Nolan did so much for the comic book industry with The Dark Knight, and how he brought a seriousness to the genre, the comic book movie adaptation genre, and that's something we haven't seen yet with video games. And I wish that Warcraft had been the movie to do that, and I don't think Assassin's Creed is going to be the movie to do that. So we'll have, there's still a movie to come, hopefully, that will make that transition. Maybe they need to get a Christopher Nolan level talent onto one of these things. You would hope that would have been Duncan Jones, but unfortunately that's not it. There's supposed to be a cut with 40 more minutes, but how many times is Hollywood going to do this? You can't keep promising a longer, better cut, right? I'm talking, of course, about Batman v Superman. So we'll see. But anyway, I think that's the problem, and I think it's not a clear-cut problem because they would have fixed it by now. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. maybe it's also a loyalty issue, target audience issue, like trying to make sure that it appeals to the video game players, but then, not having to, push the non-video game fan away, right? How do you make it accessible to everyone, yet, not too far backwards for the game players? We'll see what happens. But that's my answer to your question, Jacob, and we'll see what happens with Warcraft. I wouldn't totally count it out. But we'll see. Hollywood, and just in general, we've discussed this a lot. Hollywood just needs to get smarter, and they have to get smarter about their spending, their budget decisions, about their quality, their issues, and also they have to stop thinking the audience will just pay to see anything, because that's clearly not the case anymore. All right, so that's today's morning movie news. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode, even though things are a little slower paced right now. Please write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories and that viewer question. What are your thoughts? Can you figure out why video game adaptations do so poorly, or are done so poorly? And then, of course, let me know what you'd like to see covered tomorrow and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.